welcome to our IGDA San Diego Fireside chat. Today we are joined by a new lovely guest here, which is Rachel. I am Margaret Crone. I'm your marketing manager for IGDA San Diego, and I hit my microphone. And I'm also the community marketing lead for Intrepid Studios and the CMO for Roll For It. And with me is my lovely co-host, as always.
Hi, I'm Austin. I'm the Vice Treasurer of IGDA San Diego, and I'm also a software engineer for Centauri Core.
And of course, our lovely guest.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm currently a producer at Bungie, but I was also a former alumni of the IGDA San Diego board two years ago. Oh God, time.
How does it feel now that there's a whole new group of people? Is it weird watching it from the distance?
A little bit, but Austin was definitely part of it when I was part of it too. Yep. So I did that's why we're like, hey Austin, how's it going?
I think we have three OGs. I think it's Judah, Austin, and Alec, or are you?
Alec, yeah.
And Vic.
And Vic is he still? I don't know if he's.
He's come. Yeah.
I think he's leaving.
Yeah.
But he's still been hanging out, but yeah. I feel like all the alumni still hang out because I see them all the time chatting and being part of what we do. So it's nice. It's nice to see the OGs there still.
It's nice to be part of the private alumni board. I'm like, yeah, I get to chat with folks. I'm like, hey, how's it going? It's been a while.
Also, they mostly just tell us what we're doing wrong. They're like, hey, your bot's broken. I'm like, yeah, I know.
I will say this is a significant improvement since I was on the board having these cool chats. I'm just going to put that out there.
Yay. Well, you can thank Austin because he kicked it off. And then I just came in and brought my OCD to it.
I'm so glad for that.
So first and foremost, obviously we're going to be talking about a whole new group of topics revolved around our lovely Rachel here. So first and foremost, we are going to be talking about her background and education in the industry, as well as the whole entire topic of breaking into the industry as a whole, which I think is something that we get asked a lot about on just generally, not even just panels, just generally we get asked a lot about it. So it'd be cool to have just a segment that's just specific for it. And then production at a AAA studio, which I think we have not talked about production at all yet, right? We've had engineers, we've had designers, we've
had publishers,
we've had communications folks, but this will be our first foray into production, which I think is really fun. And then of course, Rachel's future and inspiration. Talk a little bit about that. So quick, first and foremost, we have our 2020 San Diego Game Jam judges judging away. We have the winners locked in, and we'll be announcing those here at the end of the month, so stay tuned. We'll be announcing them one at a time until we announce the grand prize winner, and we have some cool surprise for the grand prize winners, so stay tuned for that. Beyond that, we also have our Jackbox Games Mixer on September 23rd. You can just join us at igdasandiego.com/discord, where we will give you the details on that an hour before, so you'll be able to join the link and everything. And we already have done a little test session of it, and it's going to be really fun. We have some cool Jackbox games available for folks, and I have a cat that's getting in the way.
Sorry, just a tail.
Just a butt. You're just going to get cat butts. I hope we don't get TOS'd by... cat butt being on the screen. So without further ado, let's kick things off with, your history in the industry. First, how did you get started?
So, my official title now is producer, but I actually jumped into this industry as a 3D artist. So I went to school for art, and I did that for about a year, half, give or take, in an indie field. And I realized that I didn't really want to do that. I found that I struggled with the idea of feedback and direction from time to time, and I really just wanted to create things for myself. So creativity became my own personal thing, and I decided to try branching out into other things. So my first attempt...
In regards to that topic, just because we actually had a panel that we did for Design Week specifically, and the biggest thing that everyone came away with it, which was advice, was don't get married to your ideas. That was every single designer on that panel said that, because that is one of the hardest things to do at working for another studio, is that you are building their game, not your game, which is a hard reality.
Yeah, I feel like you can honestly say that for artists too, because you're still building content for the game that you're creating, and things can absolutely change on the fly. But that's also just the nature of game design, because it can be incredibly ambiguous.
Yeah.
Other things about that. So I decided to jump out of art, and then I was like, what do I want to do? I actually struggled for like a good couple months realizing like I had no idea really where I wanted to go after realizing I didn't want to do art. I really loved going to conventions, like Comic-Con was like a place I loved. I loved going to GDC to just meet my other fellow like industry colleagues. But then I was like, maybe marketing is where I want to go.
Maybe events.
Yeah, like events was definitely like a thing that I was looking at.
Honestly,
but,
as a producer, I could see producers being very good at events management.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yep.
Yes, but like, so just to segue to that, like I realized really quickly that I was like, okay, what am I gonna do? So I got an internship in PR, absolutely, then realizing that it wasn't marketing.
Yeah, no. I was like, oh,
no, that is a very different thing.
Wrong space.
Yeah.
I mean, PR has some like they do work in tandem with marketing. A lot of what you are doing is marketing specific, like big releases and things like that. I manage the PR team for my studio, so yeah, it's not marketing. I mean, to be clear, it's a facet of, it's a form of marketing, and I have mad respect for all of the PR folks out there because their job is hard. But like the thing that I also really quickly realized it wasn't marketing. But the thing that it did teach me was that I learned to really enjoy communication. I got really good at writing. I learned how to talk to people. I got good at scheduling. And then I realized really quickly I could transfer those skills into an actual role called production. So I realized I was like, okay, I don't really think I want to do PR. There are facets of here that I love, but I should transfer it somewhere else. And then I actually got a job at 20th Century Fox working on their mobile team. Cool.
I was specifically working in the licensing production aspect of it though.
Oh,
so like,
interesting.
Yeah, so I've gotten...
Anything licensing is just a headache.
So
I've done a lot of
that,
licensing stuff, and it's just so much of a pain in the butt. I worked on Clone Wars Adventures, so...
Yes, like licensing is definitely a very different facet of production. It is a very cool facet, like especially because you get to work with such huge IP from time to time. Like I've worked on probably literally any Fox IP that you could think of.
Nice.
I made a game for Office Space. I worked on a game that featured Family Guy. I did stuff that did American Dad. I made a Maze Runner game. I made a Kingsman game. Like literally,
I can actually see a Maze Runner game being like pretty good if it was like one of those, like if it's a mobile game. I'm guessing these are all mobile. Like one of those games where like you're just running and you have to keep running through. Like I could see that working really well.
Yeah, it was 100% like the swipe to slide, like going a specific direction kind of a thing. I mean, but they were all really amazing. Like it's like it's still licensing. So like I was part of brand management, so to speak, and I worked with these really amazing developers to create these really, really great like mobile experiences. But like that in itself is production, but just a different facet of production. And I struggled with the concept of telling everybody no all the time, which is really weird as a producer.
Hard.
But like as a producer, that's still part of my job. But like I didn't get to be part of the really like nitty gritty in the weeds creative part of it. So like, and that's really where I wanted to go. So like I was just saying no to everybody with these really cool ideas, and I felt bad. So I decided to jump into internal production. And so about 3 years after my initial start at Fox, I got a job as associate producer at Jam City, where I worked on Cookie Jam. So if you don't play Candy Crush, probably play Cookie Jam. That's all I'm gonna say.
I think we had one of the designers from Cookie Jam on our Design Week panel.
Was it Norma?
Yeah.
Yes, I love Norma.
Yeah,
I know Norma.
I met her through that, and I was like, she's lovely. I was like, I'm so glad I got to meet her.
She's a wonderful human being. I think I referred Norma to Jam City, which was pretty cool. But like I met Norma through GDC, and that was for like the really cool networking thing.
See how networking is amazing. Yeah. We keep telling people this.
Oh yeah.
Yes. It's definitely also just like the industry is incredibly small. So like the moment you meet somebody, you retain that particular relationship, and then people just come back to you to say either hi or hey, I'm looking for a job.
Totally.
So
or they just want free stuff.
Yes.
Yep.
I get that a lot.
I've had so many people ask for codes for Beyond Light, and I'm like, but it's definitely like it's cool. I love this industry. It's small as hell though. So I did about a year at Jam City where I worked with some really amazing fellow production folks, amazing engineers, amazing artists. And then I was like, okay, I got my hand on about a full year of production in mobile. And then I was like, I really want to try AAA production. So I left Gem City about a year after starting, and then I got my job at Bungie in 2018. And now I am currently one of the producers on Destiny 2, working on the seasonal releases.
Awesome.
Pretty cool.
I mean, you kind of already answered some of my other questions, was just like, what other companies that you worked for. And I guess, like, when you're looking at your background and, like, where you came from, do you think that there were any things that, like, any mistakes that you made over the years that you've learned from that you think, like, would be something that other people can learn from your mistakes? I find that often I learn from other people's mistakes. Like, being in the communications field, I get to see a lot of people make communication issues. So, on the marketing, on the community side, on the PR side, I get to see that a lot. And so from my perspective, I'm always like, that's what not to do. So is there a what not to do that Rachel did?
I mean, I think the thing I would say to that is that, like, I make mistakes all the time.
We
Like,
all do.
and like, I can't think of, like, a ginormous, like, career changing mistake.
It doesn't have to be that big. We're not talking about that you had to make a huge mistake. It's more of, like, it can be on the smaller front too, you know?
I think the thing for, like, this might be less about people just joining. Well, no, this might definitely apply to that. Like, learning to let go. Like, I tried really hard to absorb everything. Like, so, like, I would just take on way too much, way too fast, especially when I was starting. And even now, like, later in my career, like, I just take on everything thinking, like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And the reality is like, no, you can't actually handle that much stuff. You need to be able to rely on other people to tell you that, like, one, you just can't do it all. Two, like, it's okay to ask for help. Especially I
think that's so I want to touch on that because I think that's such a big thing. I think I even my, like, people that I work with, I'm always telling them, like, it's okay to ask when you're not sure about something. I think sometimes people think that's incompetence. Like, oh, if I ask, that means I'm incompetent. I'm like, no, I want you to ask so you don't waste, a full day making an asset. And then I come back and I'm like, hey, bro, that's wrong. Make this thing, like, and that goes for a lot of things. I'm just using it as an example. But, like, you don't want to waste your time and you don't want to waste people's time because that's money. Time is money.
But it's also, for us, it's like, if a 30-minute talk with a senior engineer is going to save you 6 hours, that's worth it.
100%.
Or if you're having trouble and you're taking more than 5 minutes to figure something out, like, freaking go ask somebody, because they're probably going to tell you how to do it, and then going forward you're going to know from then on. And maybe take notes. If, like, if it's a complicated thing, take notes. No one's going to be like, you need to memorize this. I find so often that people are like, oh, I didn't think I could take notes on, like, how to do the process. Granted, processes should be written already, but, like, in the case of something that isn't, maybe you're the one that writes it, and now you're taking initiative, and that looks even better for you on your review.
Yeah, it's 100%. Like, for me, I think the biggest mistake was just assuming. And the reality is that you shouldn't. It's okay to ask questions. I think there's a world where too many questions is a problem, but, like, I do think it's okay to find your foothold and, like, figure out how to just kind of grow from there. I think one of my favorite producers right now that I'm currently working with is like, if you make a mistake, she just, like, was like, it's okay to make mistakes. It's all about making mistakes because you only get better as you progress in your career because you just know what not to do. It's
true. It's very true. I think we've talked to a lot of people between Austin and I on these fireside chats and also on our other panels. And I think very often it is, don't be afraid of failure, because failure is how we learn things. Failure is how we know where, like, the good and the bad is. If you didn't have that, you don't know what success is. And so it's okay.
Yeah.
A box, cats, boxes. Sorry.
Yep. I was like, what happened?
We're okay.
Oh gosh. Yeah. No, it was, I continue to make mistakes to this day. Like, there's no way, shape, or form that I am a perfect producer. It's always nice to get, like, the other thing I would say too for folks, if they're working with producers, tell your producer if they're doing good. Like, just tell them, we appreciate you. Like, sometimes just getting that validation is super important. So it's like, it's just nice to know that we're doing the right things.
I think that's a good thing for anything. I find that often that helps with morale. I think people forget to say thank you for even, like, small things. And I'm a person who anytime, like, any small thing that someone does, I'm always like, thank you for doing that, you know, like, great job on that. Like, I think it just gives you, like, a lot of people need that validation. Otherwise they feel like they're like not doing well. And I think you learn this as a leader, like what type of validation people need.
Yeah.
But I find that majority of people, almost like 100% of them, like to be told, like, I did a good job on something, right?
Yeah. The next step to that, though, is accepting the compliment, too.
Yes.
Yep.
That's hard.
That's really hard.
Which is funny because I had to post social copy that included me in it, and one of my other coworkers wrote like "wonderful Margaret Crone," and I crossed out "wonderful," strike through it when I posted it to the community, just as a troll to be funny. But yeah, I'm self-deprecating, so I know that that's not healthy.
Yeah.
I'm working
On the
through
flip
it.
side, I would say also, you know, if there is some part of a process that really does annoy you or that you think could be improved on,
Speak up.
you can bring it up and speak up in a way that's not antagonistic.
Yep.
Oh
And
yeah, don't
that's
be like, this
always
sucks.
good.
Just be like, hey,
But yeah.
I think this process maybe isn't working out because of X or Y or Z.
Yeah, and it's always, you need to be able to be honest with your producers or your project managers or anyone you really have to talk to.
100%. Absolutely.
And one of the things that I always say as a leader too, and I think this applies to production because you're literally leading people all day, is like, I don't know about a problem unless you tell me there's a problem.
Yep.
Like, I can know that there's problems, but like, I won't know that you internally have a problem with something if you don't ever tell me, unless it's like an obviously glaring one, right? Like, sometimes.
Hi, cat.
Hello.
George is fine. This is George.
Hi, friend.
I have 3 cats, so they've all been fed. They're just being crazy because they want me to play with them.
Okay.
I don't know if the chat can actually see it, but because he's like far down here, but he like peeked up. Oh my god.
Wait, I want to just touch on really quickly what you're saying. Are you saying that the person working with like the leader should be telling you there's a problem, or are you expecting the producer to be able to tell you there's a problem, or both? Just want to clarify.
I'm anybody. Like no
Yeah.
one
If
knows
someone has
what
a
you're
problem.
thinking unless you say it, right?
Yes,
You know.
100%. I mean, we're totally detracting from the actual agenda here, by the way. But that's me being a producer, and I'm looking at it. I'm sorry.
No, actually, we're
No.
perfectly on time.
Woohoo! But
No, we are good.
it's
Yeah.
definitely like one of the things that I struggle with is like I am not an expert as like a producer. Like I am 100% the people manager. So like I actually rely really heavily on my people that I'm working with to tell me if there's a problem. So like to your point, like if there's a problem, tell me, because I won't know otherwise, just because I can't necessarily, I mean, that's not entirely true now, but like I need you to tell me when there's a problem. The more you do the role, obviously, the more familiar you become with the content. So you start identifying those things earlier. But like in the very beginning, like I had no idea when there was a problem, just because I didn't recognize it as a problem, because they just know it better than I do.
Well, and sometimes it's like you've been doing a process for 2 years and someone's had a problem with that process for 2 years but never spoke up about it, right? And then now you're talking to them and they're like, yeah, I've been having this hiccup like with this like one process, like why do we have to send it to this person? Why can't I just take it from there, from this section? And they're like, oh, well, why didn't you tell me this 2 years ago? I could have fixed this and we could have removed that person and then we would have way more work done. Like those are the things that I'm talking about in regards to that. On the flip side, we talk a little bit about failure and things that we can learn from failure. What do you think are your biggest accomplishments? Speaking of, having a hard time taking compliments, what do you see, like when you look back, or like when you look like what you've done, like what are the things that like always stick out to you that you're like, I'm really proud of that?
I mean, like the genuine releases are always really cool. Like when you actually get to see people playing the content that you've worked on. Like it's really cool to see streamers engage with stuff that you were like playtesting like 2 months ago. And like just seeing like their genuine heartfelt reactions. I mean, that's my real way of getting some level of instant feedback, but like knowing that folks are playing with it is really, really cool. Like that was really cool. Like my first release with Bungie was Season of Opulence. And I was like, this is super cool. I'm watching folks play the things that I worked on. This is mind-blowing. And it was a really, really, really cool moment when I released that. Other accomplishments, like, I mean, just...
I think that's a huge thing for me too. Like as somebody who's a creator, and when I create something and seeing people really enjoy what I create, I think there's a level, obviously there's some chemicals that are involved in that process. But there's also a level of, when when you enjoy something that someone creates, being like thankful for those things. Like we're people who are making these things and putting our earned time into these. I often see people say like, oh, developers don't care about their products, but like really they do. Like even if it's a bad update that you didn't like, there were people who really spent a lot of time working on that, and they thought you would like it. Maybe there were some misconceptions on that, and that's okay. We learn from that, right?
Yep. I mean, that's also the joy of being like working on live games too, because you can take that particular information and then just apply it and learn from it for everything that you do. But yeah, I'm trying to think of other cool things. Like, it's really weird to think of myself like to your point, like I'm like, I do things, I do them okay, I guess.
It's hard to look back at your own things, right? Like I really honestly do find it very difficult to be like, and we are our harshest critics, right? We are the people who are like, I can always do better, unless you're somebody who's really cocky, which I know people like that too, which I'm like, humble it down, buddy. There's a balance that you have to find.
Oh, we got a good question from one of the guys from Psionics, and he said, what's the biggest challenge you and your team face making constant updates for a live game?
I cannot get into the super nitty-gritty details. I apologize. Yep. I honestly, like, if I was to generalize it, I honestly think it's just time. Like, people have an expectation of when we're going to be releasing a thing, and like, I don't necessarily know if people truly understand gamers and developers absolutely understand. Specifically developers understand.
I was gonna say, I'm not too sure gamers understand.
Some gamers can understand, some do not. I like when I read some of the stuff that people say on like the forums, I'm like, you do not understand how game development works at all.
It's like,
but some people are like, oh, you kind of get it. All right, good job.
Yeah, like it's 100% like time. Like it takes a lot to make a thing, and like there's so many moving pieces and so many moving like things to just align them, and so like you don't really realize how fast it goes when you're making a thing, and so like you have to just especially in a live game, like you have to constantly be doing a thing and always planning for the future. But like players have an expectation of when a thing will come out, so like you have to meet those deadlines. Like you're actively doing it.
Yeah, I find that like the biggest challenge when it comes to like production stuff is managing resources versus features, because a lot of the time, and that ties into time, right? Like it's like how much resources do we have? How many features are we trying to accomplish in this deadline? And can we achieve that, right? So I think often that time is like, hey, we either have to hire more people to meet that deadline with the resources that we have, and to make all those features, or we have to cut some of these features in order to make it on the time. So I think like to me that from my experience with like production timelines and things like that from all the companies that I've worked for, that has been like the biggest issue that I've seen. Hopefully that helps answer your question, Jadkins.
Good question.
Yeah, that was a good question.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think you know like there's a lot that goes into the industry and how we make things, and production,
also, especially something
like
that doesn't end, you know.
Yeah. For a live product like what you're working on.
Yeah, it's like.
Yeah, I think the other thing I would say too is like morale is like can be a challenge too, especially like while working on like live things, just because it doesn't necessarily feel like you're stopping. So like people are just making things, like especially with mobile games that you have, like people actively wait for those updates, right? So like, and then the people that are making them are like, I'm doing the thing now, I'm doing the thing now, I'm doing it now, and again and again and again, and you just want to make sure that people are supported and feeling good about the stuff that they're doing, and like you want to make sure that they're really happy with the content they're making.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Like when you're looking at employees and how much work they have, and like the constant, because obviously you're the one piling the work on. Do you find that there is like a balance in how you provide those work? Like, is it like, oh, I'm going to give this person a big project and then a smaller project and kind of like give them good balance, or is it kind of like, you know, this is what they're good at, this is what they're constantly going to be doing for the most part?
It depends really on the studio and the project that you work on. Like every studio is different in how they manage their production backlogs. Like how you balance out the priorities versus the features is actually very different. So I can't really like I want to give the things to people I want to give the things people are passionate about to them. And I want to give them all the time in the world to be able to build those things. Like I want to give them like forever
Yeah.
But it doesn't work that way. I typically will do some level of capacity planning to understand how much time I have, and then I start actively looking at their skill sets and trying to balance it out with my leadership teams to really understand, like, hey, this person could do this, and this, but like, it's again super different per like studio. Like everybody does it a little bit differently.
Yeah, it is definitely a different vibe, and obviously we even talk to like people that have the same job and they have different opinions on things, and I mean that's what the point of a fireside chat is, right? Like we want to talk to you and get your opinions on it, but it's always very interesting. I'm going to kind of move over into our next topic here, which is going to be breaking into the industry. And I think this is kind of like a huge topic. We're going to spend a good amount of time on it. I have a lot of questions. I know there's a lot of people in the community who have asked us a million questions. If you have questions in chat, Austin will be grabbing them. So definitely feel free to send those our way, and we'll do our best to integrate them where it makes sense. But
that's also good because everyone's got a different story.
Yeah,
everyone came in a very different way,
and it's so cool to meet people and hear your stories and hear how they got into the industry. You know, some people do education, some people do other stuff. So this is the first time we're actually talking about it as like its own discussion topic. So let's get things started off by talking about education. Do you think this is an important aspect of getting into the industry? And if so, what kind of education should folks seek? And obviously that's a very broad question because there's a lot of jobs in the industry. But you know, do what you will with that.
Hey, not to totally knock my own school. I don't necessarily, I feel like I went to school for art and like I'm clearly doing production.
I went to school for healthcare administration and music theory, and I have a bachelor's degree in both. So
right,
I'm with you, girl.
Very much like I'm on the fence about it because there's certainly aspects of school that I think I really appreciate. Like I still have lifelong friends that are in the industry that I met at my school. I think, to be completely honest, the thing that school gave me was a network, a circle of people I could talk to and try to figure out how to break into various facets of this industry. But I'm also completely on the flip side where I don't necessarily think you need schooling to break into the industry, especially because everything can be learned. It's skill based. Mm-hmm. Like you could make a small game, put it on the App Store, and ship it, and then you would have something for your portfolio to say that you did some level of game design. And that is significantly. I mean, you could certainly do that in school too, and like that'd be like the curriculum you did. But like you don't necessarily need to go to school for that. It is definitely like a weird thing for me because like, again, I like really appreciate the education I got. I actually have a minor, hilariously, in Japanese, which I thought would be super beneficial while trying to go into this industry.
Do you still have it?
I technically have it. I can't speak it at all now. I can.
Okay, all right. I was like, come on, you got to drop some Japanese on us. I want to go to Japan so bad. Like that's a place I haven't been, and it's on my list of places I want to travel.
We were going to bring you as our translator.
Yeah, we were going to. Austin.
I think I want to encourage people to go to school for a backup plan. Like that is genuinely my advice. Like, which is a really terrible thing to say to some point. Like the games industry is super impacted. It's one of the hardest industries to break into because a lot of people are excited about joining it. And so like, I don't necessarily know if you'll be able to break into the industry. So I want you to have a backup plan in case that doesn't work. And like, I don't know if that's okay for you. Like if you're like, I could go in and get like a business degree and then potentially use that and then come back into the games industry at some point, but you have that experience, like, yeah, industry.
We also heard from someone like, Vic. He didn't do games at all for a while, and then just all of a sudden went, I want to do games. And he did, so it's like,
I think there is an element of education that's very important for certain fields. I think if you're going into an engineering field or sometimes an art field, depending on what it is, whether that's animation or, something of that sort, sometimes those education fields can really teach you what you need to learn and those skill sets that you need, especially if you're not a good person at like time management and learning yourself. I do agree that like you can learn those skills. Like, let's be honest, any skill that you could ever learn, you can learn yourself.
Yeah.
It's a matter of whether you are going to be dedicated enough to take the time to time management and actually learn all of the things that you need to do. And there are patterns in the way that you learn things. And I think that can be very helpful in a school setting. I also think that, going to school teaches you a lot about you have to interact with people, and teamwork is a very important thing, and you have to interact with people that you don't like. You're gonna be on teams you don't like people, and guess what? In real life, when you're working with people, you're not gonna like everybody you work with all the time. So I think there is an element of that you beyond networking. I think networking is huge. Like, that is definitely a big thing. Making friends is important, but there's also, communication skills, whether they're written or spoken, that I think are very important that school teaches you. I'm technically still a shy person, but I was very, very shy. And so I think like that was something that really helped me learn to be like, talk to people and be around people. And I value all the communication that I had to learn, like those skill sets.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, I do think school gives you that. I'll also play the devil's advocate and say that you could probably go to like a game jam and get that same experience about working on a team with somebody who you don't necessarily like. I think schooling offers network structure. It offers structure. It really does. And certainly if a curriculum is set up to have you have like an end result of like you've shipped a thing, you've got a portfolio, like then it is 100% worth it. But like that also really only works though if you really decide when you go to school that you're going to stick to this particular discipline. Well,
that's the other thing I do think school is useful for, is figuring out what you like and what you don't like.
Yes, 100%.
You could try lots of things.
Yeah, exactly. And for an 18, 19, 20-year-old kid, that's really useful, because it could be you go into games and you go, maybe I don't actually like this.
That's true. And there have been a lot of cases where people go into the game industry and they're like, this is not for me. I like playing games, but I don't think I like making them. People think it's like, oh, you get to play video games all day. I still have family members who think that's all I do all day. And it's like, no, that is not what I do all day. I wish that was all I do today, but it is not. It is a lot of work. And I mean, no matter where you work, any job you do, you're going to have a lot of work if you want to excel in your fields.
Yeah. I'm gonna jump back to something you said earlier too, where you think schooling works for very specific facets of the industry. I think like business, you absolutely need to go to school. Like if you're doing like analytics, if you're doing any level of business management, you absolutely need like an MBA, for example. Finance, 100%.
People don't want to give you. It's funny. People don't want to give you access to all their money.
100%. Like those there's 100% very specific disciplines in this industry that absolutely should require some level of schooling. And I know some of the bigger schools, like in LA, for example, like USC is one of the biggest schools that people recruit from for the industry as well. So like the industry itself finds schooling to be very important.
Yeah, go to those job fairs, because a lot of companies will have their HR people sitting there with like a little booth. Like you'll see Blizzard, you'll see, like all kinds of different companies there that are looking for people. So, and it's not only just USCD, like it's a lot of different smaller colleges too that you'll see that at. So take part.
100%. Do it. Seriously.
Do it.
Yeah. The other thing that schooling gives you is an opportunity to do an internship, which you cannot do typically a lot of the time if you're not in school. I got really lucky because my PR thing was a PR internship. And I was out of school. Like I got paid minimum wage. I moved home. But like the internships are like this little gateway into really understanding whether or not this is a thing you want to pursue. Like they absolutely give you a really cool look into what it takes to build a game.
Yeah. I think in regards to education, if you're not sure what field you want to go to, there's a lot of general classes that you can take. But yeah, I think it is a good opportunity to try new things and try out all the different things. If you have the money to afford it. Obviously college is expensive. Not everyone. I know for me, I could not afford that. I was working 2 jobs trying to get my degree. And at that point, I was almost done with my bachelor's and I was already working in the game industry, but I'm like, I'm going to fucking finish this thing. Like it's almost done. I might as well get it over with. Speaking of, we've talked a lot about experience. I think this is a great transition into the next topic, which is, experience in most fields is really important. But if someone is new to the industry and just starting out, what can they do to gain relevant experience before breaking into the industry? And I think you gave some examples already on that.
you can join game jams. There's a lot of folks that are often looking for those specific things. You can absolutely just read up on various facets and try to understand where you potentially want to go. Attending conferences like the Game Developers Conference that typically occurs.
So expensive though.
It's extremely expensive, but there's an opportunity to volunteer. So you could join the volunteer program and get a free all access pass, that kind of stuff. Even for PAX, you could join, go as an enforcer, for example, because I know a lot of folks that are just attend and they're part of the industry.
You can also just go to the place and not go to the actual event.
Yeah.
There are a lot of meetups outside. I mean, I don't want to throw that out. But some people can't afford to go
hang out at the bars that I know people are going to.
Just go to the W and sit there.
Yeah, I just kind of sit at the different bars that I know that those people are going to congregate.
But I'm not talking about just stalking people in a bar, but I'm saying
it's because they're going to get there together and hang out. There's after things that happen.
There are mixers and stuff that go on outside. There are little time gatherings for different development fields and disciplines. Yeah. So watching.
Also, someone brought up personal projects.
Yeah, personal projects
showing that you actually, can actually start and do things on your own.
Yeah, passion projects are super big, and it definitely feel free to pursue those. The other thing I was gonna say is just they're the IGNA mixers are super big too, because you're just going to end up meeting folks. That's part of the networking conversation, but
Thanks
you can
for plugging us.
Thanks for the plug. Yep.
But they're even for just the San Diego chapter, there's chapters all over the states. So you could certainly go to the San Diego one, but you could also go to the Orange County one, or even the one in LA, and you'd be 100% meeting new people who are probably just as eager as you to potentially just do a game jam together. Again, networking, but also just creating something is super huge.
Why not do both at the same time?
Yep.
There you go.
No, it's definitely valid. I think, when I'm looking at portfolios, or my team is looking at portfolios, looking at your body of work, whether it's something that you've made personally, or if it's something that you made for a company, you could be working for a huge company and what work you did wasn't that impressive, but this, someone who maybe made a smaller game, but really shows that they understand development and design, maybe that changes, puts you
even if if you work on a lot of projects with other people, I've personally vouched for other people I've worked on just a single game jam with, and I realized, I really like the stuff that they did. I like the effort that they showed in that thing. Yeah, of course I'd vouch for them if they wanted to work with us.
Yeah.
100%.
I think, game jams not only giving you a body of work, because that gives you something to put in your portfolio, to also networks. I mean, the opportunity that you might have that you're working alongside someone who works at Bungie, and they're Rachel's hell yeah, that person was great. Let's bring them on. Even though you have no experience. I think sometimes that can happen. It's crazy. It's a little bureaucracy, but knowing people is huge in any industry.
100%. Yeah, I think it's also really real though for this industry, just because of how small we are. The other thing I would say is not necessarily how do I say this, leave the industry, get the experience you might need to apply to this industry. That is also a very real way of doing it. I've worked with people who have never been in the game industry before, and they came in and just did amazing things. You could be a cinema, you could, for cinematics, for example, you could work in a VFX house and just apply the VFX production experience to a games industry experience. Will there be a sharp, steep learning curve? Probably, but you still have that relevant experience. And I did PR first, obviously, and then I just came back to production, but all the skills I learned there were super relevant. So don't be afraid to try something outside of the games industry to just apply it to just make it a little bit better.
Totally. And there's a lot of, I think, there's a lot of ways to gain the experience through, I would say even smaller projects. You don't have to just immediately apply for that big company that you want to go for, and maybe you're not going to get the position. You can work for some smaller indie folks. You can, work on side projects with other groups of people who are trying to actually make something.
Freelancing is a real thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
That being said, don't be afraid to apply to those at the same time.
Oh yeah, don't. Yeah. You never know what will happen. There are a lot of junior positions that you can apply to.
I would also say don't be afraid to apply to some of the more senior ones too. more often than not, we have people apply less just because they see that really scary like number requirement. But if like you have the relevant experience and you have like a really great like resume, like people will be like, hey, maybe you don't necessarily fit for this role, but we can certainly look at something else.
I would also recommend, this is a big thing for me when I'm looking at cover letters and resumes, is if you are somebody, especially somebody who has experience but not in the industry, but you have experience elsewhere, being very clear in your cover letter why you want to work for my company. I do see a lot of generic cover letters, and it's very clear that you're not interested in my product and working on the product that I'm working on. You know, like if you're super passionate, you give a lot of relevance of like why you want to work there, that makes a huge difference, especially if you're coming outside of a field where I'm like, why would this person want to work here? Looking at their experience, it's like, why aren't you working in cars, or like why aren't you working in whatever it might be? But when I read your cover letter, the passion that you show in regards to gaming and like how you want to apply your skills to being in the industry, like that to me can tell a story. And now I'm like, now I want to meet this person, I want to interview you, right? Like, whereas if I had not read that and I just looked at your resume, I'd be like, meh. Out you go.
Yeah, always personalize it. Like 100%, definitely make sure you make it clear to me like why you think it's important you work for this studio. Like cover letters are still very important. I think cover letters vary per studio, to be completely honest. But like I think cover letters give you an opportunity to highlight yourself in a way your resume couldn't. Like what level of an accomplishment do you think is really important to the role that you're applying for?
We had a comment where Jadkins from Psyonix was saying, yeah, he's received cover letters where they've forgotten to replace the company names.
Oh, yep. No.
And that is, again, you really need to...
It's so clear when someone's doing that too. Like I've read a lot of cover letters, like even in the last few months. And I'm just like, wow, like you really just sent this out to everybody. Like it had to have been the way how generic it is. And like, it has no relevance to me in my industry. Like no.
It's always fun.
Yep, it's one of those things.
We kind of did talk about this next topic, which is, what is the value of networking and what are the best ways to go about this when you're a new person? I think we talked about a lot of places and spaces that people can go to, but maybe kind of like focusing in on that. And
I mean, I think like networking is the mixers definitely for sure. Cause like those are the places for networking. Like you will certainly, people are going there with the intention of trying to meet new people to build.
They want to meet you. You're not being a creeper.
Yeah.
Yes. Like 100%. Like the conferences are another really good example. Like if you're going to message me on LinkedIn, like tell me why. Like don't just blindside me with a message, please. Or with no message. Like I'll get like tons of people that'll just reach out and I'll be like, I have no idea who you are. Like
they're just like, hi, that's it. And you're like,
I'm like,
I don't know who you are.
Cool.
I've had someone message me on like Instagram messages talking about like what they want to do in the game industry, and I replied to them because I had context of why they were messaging me. It was a weird place to message me about it, but I was like, all right, yes, this is your social platform, but
Yeah. I think those social platforms are okay. Like Twitter and I think Twitter especially is with how many game
Twitter makes more
on.
sense. Instagram was very odd. But I mean, I'm one of those people who like, I put myself out there. There's a lot of people who put themselves out there who are like, hey, if you need help, if you want advice, come to me. Like I'm here for you. So, it was a little weird, but at the same time I was like, I'll help this person out.
Yeah, like I do think I think social sites are okay. Like some people are okay with it, other folks are really not okay with it. A lot of folks who do offer like advice have been asked a lot. Like the bigger names that have the verified marks next to them are like probably like I've written this somewhere. Go read it, like that kind of a thing.
Take your time to research for sure.
Yeah,
I've answered a lot of questions that I've probably answered a million times, and at this point I should just write a book.
Yeah, 100%. Like there's existing documentation out there for you to help you understand how to do specific things. Like if I don't necessarily want like a question of like, actually I don't know what the question is off the top of my head because it's kind of late in the day and I'm brain dead. But
okay.
but like it's definitely like you can reach out to me on Twitter. I'm happy to respond. I may not always respond because life is crazy.
Oh, you
but
just
I will
open yourself
try.
up. There's gonna be a lot of messages.
Yeah.
Oh, you know.
Tweet at her.
Like you're more than welcome. Like I am certainly more than happy to try and answer questions where I can. And I know a lot of folks on the internet are certainly happy to do that too. But again, to your point, 100% do your research.
Yeah, there's a lot of helpful advice out there for folks. There's a lot of other panels that have been put together. You know, obviously we're making one right now. And
there's a ton. Like GDC has like launched a bunch of like their free panels on there as well too. So like absolutely just go ahead and utilize that as like a super great valuable resource.
Yeah, and events are great. You know, like you were talking about GDC, you're talking about a bunch of various events. Obviously, right now we're in a weird situation where events are not going on as much. But you know, down the line, they will hopefully come back, and we'll be able to, you know, all interact with each other. But outside of that, there's been a lot of virtual mixers that have gone on, not only in IGDA but like in other groups. So definitely keeping an eye on those places, I think, is very important. And then, you know, like obviously following people that inspire you. They often provide lots of wealth of knowledge that you can follow and check out. It's, you know, always good.
Yes, 100%. Definitely agree with that. I was going to say one other thing. You mentioned career fairs earlier, like especially with recruiters attending those, that is an opportunity to just network right there.
Yep.
Like recruiters are there for, like, they're there to talk to you. Like they want to talk to you. So like definitely just engage with them when you can.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, I think there are a lot of recruiters that are on LinkedIn too. You could just message them and they will help you out too. A lot of them are trying to fill positions. So I think
the fun part though is that once you have the position, that's when they all start hitting you up.
Yes.
The moment I got like one of those, like a position, I got like the next day you get like 50 recruiters going, hey, we saw you do this. Do you want to do this for us?
Yes.
I think obviously beyond education, experience, and networking, do you think there are any other tips that you would provide to people who are kind of like looking to get into the industry? I mean, obviously, a lot of what we're talking about right now has been said a million times at this point. Do you think there's some stuff outside of that we could discuss that might be helpful for people?
The other thing I would say is know your value. Like understand when you go for a role, like go into it knowing that what you expect and what you want from like a payment, like 100% stick to your guns. It is a-okay to do that. Negotiation is a real thing.
It's okay to step away from a job because it's not gonna, they aren't gonna value you. Because if they don't value you at that point, do you think they're gonna value you over time?
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is like, do your research on the industry. Like I'm going to be the first person to say that this industry is like it's not perfect. It's not even a little close to being perfect at all. Yes.
Oh yeah, it's still new.
Yeah, and like if you're going to come into this industry, you're coming into it with all the problems it currently has, and be an advocate for change. But like know that when you come into it, and don't expect it to like work for you right off the bat. I've certainly had my share of things. I'm certain a lot of other folks have as well.
Well, I mean, look at right now. I think in the last few months, we've heard a lot of crazy stories in the industry, and a lot of people have been holding it back, right? Like I definitely have my fair share of them, and you know, I didn't feel like it was the right time to kind of talk about those things ever, because honestly, you don't want to burn bridges. You want to keep your job. You want to keep having a job in the industry, and sometimes there are crazy things happening with people who are executives or people who are, you know, there's definitely some madness going on. And I don't like to always bring gender into it, but like obviously me and you are ladies, we've had to deal with some other trials and tribulations in the industry, especially coming into it early. Like, you know, I've been in the industry for about 14 years. And so I've gotten to see it from what it was before, where like I didn't have any other female coworkers. So yeah.
That's happened to me too. But like, yeah, just that'd be the biggest piece of advice. I'm like, I want you to join my industry. I want you to be excited about what you're coming into, but I don't want you to regret it.
Yeah.
Don't give up your happiness for it, you know?
Yeah.
Don't give up your value for it. I think is what you're saying here. It's like you have worth and it matters.
Yes. 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah. Anything else that you'd like to kind of present to folks?
I'm going to think of things.
No, it's
but
okay.
I can't think of anything.
It's been a long day. We're recording this, it's 7:30 at night almost here, and we all have had a full day of work. So
What?
Yeah, it's okay. Just wanted to make sure that you get everything off your chest that you want to make sure that you get out there into the world.
I guess in terms of last bits of advice, when you're reaching out to somebody for the first time, don't be weird about it or aggressive about it.
Don't call me babe.
Please don't.
Oh God, have you gotten that?
Yeah, someone called me babe.
Oh my God, why?
I was like, do I even reply to this person? I actually
also,
gave them a
if you're
lesson. I actually was like, hey, in the future, my first advice would be to never call somebody babe that you do not know.
Yes.
Yep.
That is a very familiar term that you should never use with anybody you don't know. And the person was like, wow, I've been calling people that for my entire life. You're the first person who has told me not to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely don't be aggressive about it. We want you, people want you to reach out to them to get advice, information, but if we don't respond to you, it's just because we either don't have the time, we're probably not trying to do it out of ill intent, but don't be aggressive about your response and get angry.
Don't keep replying back and being like, fuck you, blah, 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 just because someone doesn't reply to you.
Yeah. That's probably
you're not owed an answer, It's like people have their own lives and they're going to do their best to help, but at the same time.
100%. I think that's probably it. If I think of other things, I'll try to.
Yeah, you could pop them in anytime.
No.
Yeah, we're not on a strict schedule, so you're okay.
I'll think about it.
Yeah, think about it and toss it in here. So let's talk about what you just got done doing all day, which is you talking about production at a AAA studio. Now, I want to start things off with production is an integral part of game development, especially for a AAA company, because you have a lot of moving pieces. I think for smaller companies, you can get away with maybe not having a producer in some cases, but for folks who are kind of new to the industry and maybe haven't had that day-to-day experience of what development process is, what does production staff do? What is their job in the industry? Kind of explain that first to folks, and then we'll get into the details.
Sure. So as a producer, a lot of my job right now is managing people. I to be clear, I don't have any direct reports. I don't actually manage a person's job right now. I manage the production cycle of creating a game. That involves of scheduling the stories that people are working on in their backlog. That's prioritization. That's making sure whatever they're working.
Taking a step back for people who don't know what stories are.
Sorry,
I'll be your translator. For people who don't know what stories are, that's how much time it's going to take in order to complete a task.
It's a story point.
Yeah.
Story point. Yeah.
That's a story point. I think a backlog is the tasks that are comprised of epics, features, and user stories that help create the game. And then we typically will estimate how long it'll take something to create a thing. And
they're never correct.
We're getting better.
If you're good at doing production stuff, you can get better at honestly it's learning people, because some people take longer for certain tasks and you get used to their patterns, right?
Yeah.
You're like, this person is going to take 3 hours to make this ability. This person's going to take 2 hours to make this ability, and going forward that's going to happen. I'm just I'm simplifying it, but I'm just trying to give examples.
But you're right. A lot of my job too is building relationships with the team and trying to understand how they work and adjusting the schedule to better suit how they build things. And to your earlier point of how do you balance people's skill sets and features, and that absolutely plays into how you build out a backlog. But it's a lot of my job is managing the time it creates to create a thing. I manage, I don't necessarily in certain roles, people manage money, other roles people don't. It's ultimately about making sure whatever you release happens on time and you're getting the thing out the door. A lot of the job too is just making sure their priorities are correct. I'll work really closely with people in leadership and being hey, this is what we're going to plan to do this sprint, which is a period of time in which we do the actual work. and then we go to the next thing. But like I work with like leadership to help understand of like, is this the correct thing we should be doing this time around? Because especially like something like agile development,
which is a
we
little
always
getting all those
chaotic,
buzzwords.
yeah.
I'm
Yep,
sorry.
we're
No,
gonna
I
get all
think
the,
this is good.
no,
And
it is.
now
Just
you're
using
explaining.
littering.
Now you're explaining it. No, I think that
Yes.
I just wanted to take
No,
a
it's
step back with like
fantastic.
when you use those words, making sure you like not everybody understands them.
Yes.
I am a culprit of that too, where I like use a lot of like marketing or game terminology, and people are like, "What does that mean?" So I'm just
Yes.
I'm playing the community
Perfect.
perspective.
And a lot of these terms are also very common across, many
other
different,
development paths. Yeah.
every
Yes.
development. Like this is like these terms are not specific to game development. This is all stuff that
Yes.
I've heard in plenty of my other jobs. We had someone say, "Talk about user stories."
Ooh, talk to me.
Oh,
yeah,
boy.
like, talk nerdy to me. Tell me your user stories.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like it's yay. But like it's very much
To go back to what you're saying, you're just talking about agile development and how
Yep,
that's
agile,
different.
yep.
yeah.
I'll
Like
bring you
for-
back.
Thank you. Like every just see story points.
Story boy.
Story
Story points.
Yep.
Like for agile development specifically, like the goal of at the end of every sprint is to have something that you can play. The intent is to always be able to see the thing that you're working on and then improve it as you go.
We
But,
do the
like,
same thing. We work in an agile format because we want to be able to
Yeah.
play test after every single sprint that we have. So I
I think, and to be fair, I think like production words can be very relatively buzzwordy-ish from time to time, and like every studio creates their own methodologies as they need to, and they mishmash various things and take them from different methodologies to create what works for them. So it's like for like I've worked in something called waterfall. I've worked in something called agile. I still do poker planning. I'm answering a question, by the way. On the
You were on it. I was
I was like, I'm
Austin's
seeing
like,
it.
what am I doing here? What's
Yeah,
my
it's like-
job?
Yes.
I'm taking Austin's job too.
Yeah, like so it's definitely
No,
like
that's fine.
I'm gonna like not look at the chat.
No,
guys.
that's perfectly fine. You can.
No, you can look at the
I'm
chat.
getting super distracted though. That's the bigger
Oh, that's-
problem.
I got you.
That's what Margaret's for.
Yeah, that is what I'm here for. I'm here to bring you back on topic and keep us on time. But
yeah.
I allotted for tangents, so you're good.
Perfect.
You're
It's
good.
great. I'm just gonna go on so many tangents. But like, yeah, every studio creates their own like. It's a really like it's a bastardized version of any kind of style thrown together to create something that works for the studio and helps them get to the end result.
Yeah.
Like there's no like agile is a thing, like waterfall is a real thing, but like whether a studio actually uses the real form of that is an entirely different discussion.
Yeah, a lot of people use mixtures of stuff too, or like they change it
Yeah.
up. But I can't talk. They change it up depending on the milestone and the sprint that you're going on. Because sometimes you don't need to test something at the end of a sprint. You're just trying to get like a bunch of product done so that you can like get the engineering and the art side done. So then the design people are gonna next sprint take on that work, and design is doing like documentation the sprint that they're doing the other stuff, and like it's like, like it's a whole hot mess of stuff that you're trying to make.
I've also found
Work.
it can also depend on the importance of that specific component. Because if that component is really, really important, you may take the time to plan it all out ahead of time that you normally wouldn't for some other things.
Yeah, that's true. Some things might not need as much documentation as
Yeah.
others, where we're like, hey, implement this thing that you clearly know how it works. Whereas
Yep.
other stuff is like, I need to build out all the user stories for all the possible cases that this system could be used in, and I need you to develop it so that I can put the data in, right? Like,
Yep.
Pretty much. But I used a bunch of buzzwords in that last description, but like, yeah, that's there was a bunch of different things that I think described a producer.
you got it. I think you're
Okay,
good.
good.
Yeah, I just wanted to take you back for a moment when you're. I was like, just explain because like not everybody understands the terminology when we're
And we
explaining.
got someone asking for tooling. You
Like,
know,
Tools in
Like,
production.
what tools you use
for
in
production,
production?
or like for, I think for like it seems like he's asking more for like project management because he was mentioning like Kanban boards
Oh, Kanban.
Oh,
you would find on things like Jira or like
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, like, there's a-
Kanban. I've seen Kanban used a few
Kanban is
times.
pretty- yep.
Trello,
Trello.
Jira.
I mean, there's a bunch
Confluence.
of different. Yeah.
Confluence.
I mean, Confluence is like the primary thing when it comes to like documentation, whereas like Jira itself is for actual project management.
Tasks.
But
yeah.
you can plug them
Connect them.
together, and it's
Yeah,
beautiful.
and they create. It's beautiful, 100%. Yeah.
Just honestly, spreadsheets are also helpful. I make
Yeah.
Yep.
so many spreadsheets.
All the time.
Yeah.
Need to
all
get
the
that
time.
I wish that
Atlassian
Confluence did
sponsorship.
spreadsheets better, because then it would make my life easier. But yeah.
Yeah, like other studios use something called Azure DevOps. There's other places that use Handsoft and like Favro. There's like a ton of different tools that
Yeah, I
people
think-
can use.
I think you're gonna
Handsoft has
find
some
that
very
everyone
in-
uses their own.
Yeah, I like it. I actually do really like Handsoft. I got to use it a bit, and I think like it has some really interesting things that like are more, I think, what is the word that I'm looking for? Like young, I guess. Like it has like a messenger system and the way that you interact and the way that it tracks like tasks and the way that it does graphs like and exports them. Like I really like it, but it's kind of pricey, so not everyone can afford that. So.
Yeah, like I mean, I think Trello is the really simplest way for a lot of folks if they're doing their own like small projects. You can actually get like a free version.
Yeah.
A free version of Jira if you're looking for like a more in-depth thing just to learn the tool. I've actually never used Handsoft, but again, every studio uses their own thing. The concept of using the tool just typically will apply to every type of tool.
Make sure everyone's using the tool, and then you're good. The problem is getting everyone to use the thing.
On it, yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Need buy-in.
Because like if not everybody's using it, then it's pointless because then you have like there's no point in it. But I think with like bigger AAA companies, you're always going to have that case. Like there are systems and processes in place that you have to follow and abide by.
Yeah, I mean, but the cool thing about being a production person on like a big studio is that you're not the only producer, and like if you see a process that you feel like would benefit the whole studio, you have that opportunity to work with all of the other producers to be like, hey, I think we could probably use some level of an improvement here. Here is a proposal I'm putting together. Let's see if this is something people would be open to. Like the thing about like production is that it's all about process improvement to an extent. Mm-hmm. So a lot of my job is like, hey, like this seems really wonky. Like why don't we try something a little bit different here, and then making sure everybody's on board with doing that thing.
Yeah.
It's also, you don't get so tied to the tools that you have to use them. Like, because a lot of tools have like a way that they kind of want you to use them.
Yeah.
It's less about the tool itself and more about understanding the concepts of what those tools are doing.
Yeah, 100%.
You know?
Like I think it's really interesting. Like some people will write user stories as like a story, for example, which is like as a player, I can do this thing. Mm-hmm. And then to finish the story, people will typically create tasks underneath that make up that actual work. Whereas like some people I've worked with have just genuinely used user stories as tasks, or or you don't even have to write it as a feature or an epic. Like I think the thing that I'm trying to say is that production is malleable.
Yeah.
Use it for the purpose that you need, which is, I mean, get it to function so that it gets the job done. Like, I mean, not everyone needs to be micromanaged. Like some people need like every user story to be a Jira task. And some people are like, no, I just need the design doc in the Jira task and I can do all those things. Like, right. It just depends on the developers you're working with and how much time you're tasking. Like, I guess how you're managing time too. Like some people really want to micromanage every little detail and they want to know how much time everyone's spending on every single little feature. Whereas other people are like, hey, I just want to know that you did this for 5 hours, right? And then you just adjust it to say you did it for 5 hours. And now my graph shows that you did it for 5 hours.
Yeah, there's certainly like different ways that people quantify how work is done and how they can utilize that information to better the next iteration. But like, it's definitely like, again, it's literally per studio. Every studio does it slightly different. I've never seen anything like the same.
I feel like that's also, company to company, everyone has some slightly different thing that'll make their stuff work.
Yeah.
And the purpose of those, of those tools and things like that is just to give you a way for you to do your specific thing.
Yeah. The common feature for everybody is that you're going to have a tool that's going to help you manage your time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Whether you're doing the tool or someone else is updating it,
Yeah, I think for a lot of studios, it outside of helping people manage their time, it is really a production tool to help us understand if you're on track to finish the thing that you've scheduled out to do. Like we've asked you to estimate this time. We'll typically like see if your original estimate like meets what you've said, and are you burning down the things that you need to do to be able to meet the things that we've set you out to do.
Or are you always the person who's late on your tasks?
No.
I'm feeling judged here.
But like that in itself is also part of a producer's job. I'm like, I'm not seeing you update your tasks. So either that's telling me you're having an inefficiency issue, there's another thing happening, or you're just choosing to wait until the very end of the sprint to close everything out.
Yeah, which is okay to some extent. As long as you get the stuff done. That's my thing. As long as you get the stuff done, that's what I care about. So moving on to our next topic here is like, what do you think are the benefits to having production staff, and do you think dev teams can manage without them? And maybe like the difference between like, well, yeah, I guess we'll just start with that because that's a topic.
I think in terms of the benefits to having production, I think are just making sure that the team feels that they can come to somebody when there's a problem. I think by and large, most devs can be relatively self-sufficient and they don't necessarily need a producer to micromanage them. And it shouldn't be my job to micromanage you. You understand what you're building, you know how to do it. You can absolutely talk to your leadership team to get a sense of like, okay, like I think maybe you should do this thing first. A lot of what I do is to really highlight the risks associated with the time that you've put in there. Like you're telling me that this is going to take this amount of time, but we only have this much time to build the thing. So like if you're like wildly out of scope, I'm going to want to help you figure out like, okay, we can't actually do this, or this. We should probably talk about maybe only doing this and figuring out if we can just cut that
or
thing
in some cases
later.
It's like maybe you need a couple other people to be on this, so then you're separating the the workload. Right?
100%. Like I think a lot of my job is making sure that the person who's building the thing feels as though they can come to me with problems and I can help relieve. Thank you, Kitty.
She also agrees.
She very much agrees. It's very much like making sure that they feel like if they're blocked by a very specific thing, there's a point of contact for them to help them get rid of that blocker. But two, also making sure that I am keeping track of everything. Like I don't want people crunching. Like my job to look at the data and the time that you're putting into those things is to say like, you will not get this done in the time that we've effectively said that you have to be able to create this thing. It's also like another part of it is like empathy is like, I work with people. Like I want to make sure like you're doing the thing that you want to do. Like if you're not excited about the thing that you're working on, like we should probably talk about that.
Yeah. And I mean, you can relay that information to someone's lead too and be like, hey, this person's not happy. Because sometimes people, I think the empathy thing to me is I'm a huge proponent of that. Like I legit ask my my people who are like on my team all the time, and they probably get annoyed by me. I'm like Mother Maggie. I'm always like, are you happy? Are you okay? Is there anything I could do for you? Is anyone bothering you? Like, is there anything we can change to make the process better for you? Because like, I think, you're working with these people every day. They're pumping out content every day or whatever it is that, they're working on. And it can definitely have a toll on your morale when you're like, all I do is come in and do work and do work and do work. And all you're doing is demanding stuff from me all the time. There has to be that element of like having fun too, I think, in any job you're in. Like,
as a developer, I feel like you also don't want to have an antagonistic relationship with your producers. Because that can happen, like there are definitely some places where
no, I'm just kidding.
But like you occasionally, if you have, if there is a miscommunication, that can happen. And it's always really important because they're the ones who can really help you kind of do what you want as like a developer, as an engineer.
Yeah, like I'm going to be that person that helps find support for you to help you finish the thing that you really wanted to work on, for example. Or like I'm going to go to bat for you if you really feel like, if you're telling me, if I'm looking at the data and it's telling me that you can't do it, but you're telling me that you can do it, I'm going to try to figure out like where the discrepancy is. Like it's 100% like me trying to work with you to figure out like how I can quote unquote make you happy. Like I want to make sure that the thing that you're doing excites you and you're passionate about it.
Yeah. It's like you're a mini HR person.
But it is really useful because there's definitely been lots of times where, I've had to go to my project manager or my producer or someone and go, hey, we need to figure something out because, either something's not going well with what I personally wanted, or I just didn't feel, or, I may have made a mistake and gone, I've completely messed up this estimate. I found out X, Y, or Z.
And that's 100%. Okay. And I think communication is the big thing here, right? I think that's going to be a huge thing in, every development discipline that we have. But I think communication is always very important when you're working with somebody who's trying to help you manage your time and manage the project overall. If you give someone like the wrong information or the wrong estimate, and then you're not like being vocal about like, hey, this is actually going to take me more time, they're not going to know, and they're going to build around you getting it done in that time. and then bad things. Someone else was like designer versus producer fight, and it made me think like it'd be funny to do rap battles of people in different disciplines.
But that's actually a really interesting point, because like there are times where you feel like you do have to argue with your designers, especially with leadership from time to time. Like leadership is, and at no point is like leadership doing this in an antagonistic way. Like they
need deadlines to be met so they can do the things that they're trying to do on the business side, right?
Whereas but it's also coming at it purely from like a product perspective. Like leaders are looking at this purely from a business perspective too. So it's like, hey, we are set this time to do the very specific thing that we've set out to do. We need to meet the goals that we've set, the KPIs that we're defining for us. Whereas producers, it's very much like a lot of my job is people management. So like, I'm going to butt heads with you when you say that we really need to do this, but I'm going to go like, we don't have the time to do it. So we either have to get rid of a thing or we need to talk about crunch. And I don't, like, more often than not, I don't necessarily want crunch to be the option.
No. And I completely agree. I think it is a sense of like you need some forensic skills because, that type of argumentation is going to happen. It's not necessarily an argument in like a volatile way. It is
it's not.
It's more.
If you're shouting, it's things that have gone wrong.
yeah, which happens. I've been at companies where that's happened. But I think it is. You do need to have forensic skills in that way, like being able to communicate and voice your opinion. And sometimes you're just never going to get what you want. Like someone's going to make a decision, and now you're like, got to go back to the people and tell them the thing. And that's okay, but at least you voiced your opinion. I think is one of the major things there.
Yeah, like people feeling heard is a definite real thing. Like you want people to be able, like you want to work in a place where people feel as though their opinions are heard.
And hopefully you take action on those.
Yes.
If there's data to back it, right? Like,
yes,
that's the major
100%.
thing. Yeah. 100%. So moving on to the next thing here, we have, what do you think are the major differences when it comes to production for a AAA studio versus like a mobile studio, for instance? Because I think you have experience with those.
I think
I just want to real quick. If I got in trouble for every time I underestimated how long something was going to take me, I probably would not be working anymore, especially in the beginning, Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a part of my job though too. Like more often than not, I'll just add buffer time. Like I will always cap. I will in some cases, like a sprint might be worth like 21 story points, for example. Like it could take the 21 point, like in the world of like effort or time, that's a whole other slew of things that I'm not going to get into because it'll just dive further into a rabbit hole. But like,
I mean, we can get into behavior of people like that. We can we can go there.
It's like if a sprint 2 weeks worth of time, and we equate that to a total of 21 points. That means your tasks in the 2 weeks should not be equivalent to an entire 21 points. It should be probably closer to maybe about 18 or 20 because I want to account for some level of inefficiency, knowing that you're going to be randomized by meetings, knowing that you probably may or may not want to take a day off. There's going to be some level of found work that we didn't account for. So like a lot of my job is just planning for that. So I'll typically I'll plan for my designers to not be at 100% capacity, meaning that I am not going to fill up that work week with that work sprint for them all the way up to the top. I've already set them up to fail if I've done that. So you telling me that like you could be in trouble for just not meeting those times, my response to you would have been like, hey, maybe we should like reduce the amount of story points that you take on every sprint, knowing that and then we just relook at your velocity later on in the actual development cycle.
Because I find also that's a problem younger developers have, is a lot of them tend to be very gung-ho about what they're capable of doing. Yep. And
they're ambitious and they want to
do it.
Yeah, they're like, oh, I can make that design doc in 4 hours. And you're like, no, buddy, that's going to take you like 2 days.
Yep.
4 hours?
So,
laughable.
I just wanted to make sure, that happens more than you would think, especially when you're first starting out. And it's perfectly okay.
It's okay too for veteran designers too. I think it's a little bit more, especially when you're dealing with level of ambiguous designs. Like if you're building a framework that exists over and over and over, like it's easier for you to estimate like what you want because you've built something similar to it. And like to somebody's point about poker planning earlier, like it's easier to come to a general consensus if you've had multiple people do the exact same thing. So they know what the work is involved. But like if you're building like a completely brand new bespoke thing, it's probably going to be normal that you're going to end up not necessarily knowing how to cost it because it's just something you've never done before.
Yeah. And kind of to bring it back to our original topic, which was, talking about AAA production versus mobile studio. What do you find are like the big differences in those? I mean, obviously mobile is very different than like building for PC or console.
I think, it kind of depends actually. Like, I think it's really interesting because if you work at a studio that builds relatively a very much existing frameworks style game, like a match 3, for example, you're not going to really need a lot of level of iteration because there are existing examples that are out there already. Like, you know how to build the thing, you know how to do it because you can look at the things and not feel a level of risk with the product you're building. Whereas like if you're building something for like a AAA studio, there's a lot more unknowns just because like you're building something, you typically tend to build something new. You can certainly look at other examples in the field, but like more often than not, it's not going to be the same thing you see. Whereas like a match 3, they're like, we're gonna add leaderboards. we're gonna add some other things over here and here and here, but like they have examples to just look at, and there's a lot less iteration that needs to happen. I think
depending on the mobile game, I think for sure. Because now we're seeing a lot of games like BDO is now on mobile, which is that's a big project to be on a mobile device. I think we're seeing more of those types of, a lot more games going to that realm, which does put in a little bit more risk for sure.
I definitely think when it comes to the very big known quantity style games that make a lot of money, you're going to have a lot less risk because they're going to want to just emulate what already exists. I think, but you're right, there's 100% a lot more newer games that are coming out that have not necessarily like done anything similar. But like, I think for me in my own personal experience, that's the biggest difference. I'm not 100% sure how it works in terms of like every studio, but like I think it's scale too. Like it takes a lot of people to build a AAA game, and I do think it takes a lot of people to build a mobile game, but I don't necessarily think it's quite as big as some AAA studios.
Depending on the game, for sure. Yeah. I will agree with you. I think even for a AAA studio, there's some games that are just not going to require as much work, right? Like depending on the game that you're making. Like if you're just making like the same version but reskinned, like okay, that's easier to make. A lot of it's probably going to be an art producer, like who's managing that and giving it an art boost for the remastered version, right? Like it just really depends on like what the project is and like how much it entails, for sure. I will agree on that front.
I was just gonna.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't think I really answered your question specifically about production. I just talked about the differences.
It's okay.
But
that's what I asked, was pretty much like, what's the difference between, in regards to production in that sense?
I think the other thing, I think actually just re-honing in on the scale of the things, like there's just less that you can put in an actual mobile release. I think there's limitations, and not to say that there aren't limitations on actual AAA like releases, but like there's only so much you can fit in a binary update.
So kind of going into another topic here is, what do you think makes a good producer, right? Like we've talked about what a producer is and like what makes a producer go above and beyond. Like when you look at different people doing the same job, what will make them stand out in production?
For me, I've answered this question a couple times in interviews.
Probably. I'm like, hi, I'm interviewing you. How are you doing, Rachel?
For me, the most important things are empathy, communication, and like your work ethic, I guess would be the best way to describe that. Like, again, my job is dealing with people. Like, if I get mad at a person for making a simple mistake, I have failed effectively. Like, you're not going to want to work with me. You're going to have a hard time dealing with me. Like, I'm going to just, that's also just genuinely not how to treat humans. But like empathy is huge. Like there's going to be a variety of things that happen throughout production, and I want to make sure that the team is feeling supported. They have that ability to feel like that they can come to me with problems. They know how to reach out to me in a situation that they're like, I don't feel like I can achieve this. Help me I need to schedule a meeting with like leadership to talk about it. So like empathy is huge. Communication is also really big. Like I need to be able to summarize. I need to be able to talk. I need to be able to make sure that I am actually making my point when I'm giving you production data to basically say, hey, we're overscoped. What do you want to do about that? Like, I need to make sure that I can say the things and do the things that I'm talking about.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
I will agree on all those fronts. I've worked with many producers and agree slash agree. I have nothing to add. Like do the things.
No.
Be a nice person. Be a good human being, and communicate. And obviously
also even as like at least again I'm coming over from a developer working with producers. The ones I like the most is that even if I don't get what I want, they make me understand that is the case and that they tried.
which is good communication skills right there.
And that's all it is, as long as I feel like that producer is trying to help me out.
Someone says like story points.
My things are getting heard,
Yeah, 100%. I think
it is a balance for sure of that. And obviously if someone's starting out, what kind of things do you think that they can do to hone in on their skills in order to be in a production position in the industry?
I think I'm going to jump back to I think going outside of this particular field to just doing something similar will get you set up to actually be relatively successful. I mean, obviously reading the books to understand the different methodologies associated with production, they are fun. It can be hard to get through a lot of that, but they're super valuable, and they give you that foundation to understand what we're talking about. The other thing is just joining those game jams. You be the producer for a game jam, genuinely. You may not necessarily feel like that's a role that needs to happen during a game jam, but you can learn a ton of different things of.
You have 24 hours to make a game or 72 hours to make a game. You need someone helping you project manage. Otherwise, it's a hot mess and you don't finish your game.
That is the biggest problem with game jams is over-scoping what you can do in 24 hours. Oh,
I ran a little we did this link group with a bunch of high schoolers and kind of teaching them how to make a game, and it was very hard for them to give up features in their game. I was like, well, we only have 30 minutes left and you only completed 2 classes. Do you think we're gonna, or you only completed 5 classes? Do you think we're gonna complete all 10 classes, or should we maybe just launch with 5 classes? And they were all like, well, I could work. I'm like, we walked through it, and to the point where they were like, you're right, we're only going to get the 5 classes, and there's these 10 systems that we designed that are not going to happen, and it's a learning experience, and I think it's hard to give up those things.
You don't want to. They're your babies. They're your idea, but
gotta let go of some of those ideas. I'm sorry. I'm also going to probably tell you to cut the idea. It doesn't fit within scope. I'm sorry. I'm real sorry.
It was very interesting, and I think it was a very good learning experience for them. Obviously, I've had this experience with adults, but I think it's very, for me, I love talking to kids because they have a very different mindset of things, and they haven't been bittered by the world that's around them. So bringing them to that point was a fruition that I'm like, oh, this is what every designer or anybody who is in this industry feels for a moment of their life. I remember feeling that. Now, on the flip side of things, if someone is already in the industry and they've been there for a long time, what are ways for them to grow in their production field? I think there's a lot of people who are like, well, I'm a producer. How do I become a senior producer? I'm a senior producer. Where do I go beyond that once I've done all the producing? Are there places for me to go beyond that? What kind of positions do you think would fulfill the same type of needs and wants?
I think it just depends on really where they really want to go with their career, to be honest. I actively ask for feedback all the time from my team to be like, hey, can I do something differently for you? And honestly, through retrospectives we do during our sprints, it tells me, I'm like, how's process going? Can we adjust a specific thing? So those very specific things help me grow as a producer because I'm learning the things that I may have missed. In terms of I think it would be really I guess the best advice I would say is talk to other executive producers or senior producers that you've worked with to help understand their career paths, to understand if there's things that you're missing. Also look at existing job directs to see for a senior producer and be like, hey, this is something I clearly don't have. How could I get this particular experience in my role? I
tell people that all the time. I'm like, if you ever want a job, there's so many job listings. Go look at it and see what are the requirements and what are the responsibilities. Can you do all those things? Apply. Yeah. If you can't, learn the skills to do the things and then apply. Right?
Yeah, or still apply and then fake it till you make it.
Oh yeah, sure. I think that's a rough. I worry about people who are like that because honestly, even if you have almost all of the skills, but not all, maybe not one, and you go into the interview and you're honest about it, and you're like, but I am willing to take on and learn what I need to learn to complete that. It goes a long way in my mind.
Yeah. The other thing I would say to that is instead of saying that you can't do it, suggest how you would do it.
Yes.
because that's telling me that you know that you're thinking about it, and this is how you're being proactive in that particular approach. But like, yeah, I think those are some good ideas.
Yeah, those are solid. Do we have any questions from the chat in regards to the production?
Just book recommendations.
Oh,
Anything
cool.
that you would like to throw out for people?
Recommendations like
Of what?
Like what?
Book
for
recommendations.
Book recommendations.
Oh,
we missed the book word.
I'm sorry.
Recommendations. I'm like, recommendations of what?
Yeah.
Just life in general.
Just recommendations. What kind of food do you like? What's
Yes.
your favorite restaurant?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be like completely like you can 100% look up like agile and waterfall tutorials on YouTube, and they will be like the most like valuable like 5 minutes of your life. 100% if you're like interested in just trying to understand like what is this very specific thing. There's also like existing books from like Clinton Keith and Grant Schonkweiler. I can give you those names. We can share them out later, I guess.
We'll put them somewhere.
We'll put them somewhere. It'll exist somewhere where you can get them like off Amazon or any like bookstore, and then like those give like practical examples and really detailed, in-depth information associated with like planning and agile and all that stuff. There's genuine like books on it, and you can also like
in regards to agile, the one that I have that you can get in Audible too, so you can just listen to it while you're driving or wherever while you're doing your work. The Agile Samurai: How Agile Masters Deliver Great Software. I really love that series, like that book. It's not too long to read through or listen to. It's about like 5-hour listen, and that's one that I usually recommend to folks too.
The other thing I would recommend is wow, okay, I had it and now it's gone. Never mind.
If you think about it again, agile.
You could do Scrum certification. Like you could 100% go to like project management. Like it can be expensive, but like for folks who have never done it before, like it's a really good foundation. And then that will certainly give you a leg up for other folks in other jobs because you know how to do it.
Yeah. I mean, we could be here all day listening books, but there are a lot of helpful things out there if you Google. Usually people have reviewed stuff, so it makes it a lot easier. I honestly think people don't take the opportunity to like honestly look for stuff. Like before you even reach out to somebody, you can we're in a world where like you can Google anything, or not the word Google, you can use other search devices. You don't have to use Google. But you can search for pretty much any knowledge piece that you want, and you can find that information. That's like the beauty of the technology world that we live in. It just takes effort and time. And
Yes. 100%.
For sure.
100%.
Let's move on to the future. Looking at the future and what inspires you, like where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years? Like, do you think you're always going to be in a producer role? Do you want to be like an executive producer someday? Like,
I think so. So like, if you asked me this like a year or so ago, I would have told you I would have wanted to own my own studio. But
it's
like
a lot of work. Are you
oh boy, that's a lofty goal.
Like it's like a huge like pipe dream.
I'm with you. I feel like anybody who loves making games at some point feels that way.
They want to make theirs.
Yeah, exactly. I think again, like if you'd asked me that a year ago, that's probably what I would have told you. But like I think like I'm like the entrepreneurial aspect of it actually scares me a lot. And as I grow as a producer, I'm actually really.
But don't be afraid of fear. Like don't let fear control you. Do your dream.
I think the thing that I'm realizing though are really like my risk boundaries. Like I'm actually starting to really understand them as a producer too. So like as I go through production now, I'm realizing I'm like, this risk is not something I'm okay with. And whereas before, like I really didn't know how to identify that. And now I'm like, I don't know if that's a risk I want to take. I think for me, like, I think executive production sounds really interesting. I think just like I could theoretically just even shift to a completely different industry. I'm actually a little bit in like a weird middle ground. Like I'm not 100% sure. Like I had a really clear goal in my head, and then I realized I'm like, I have genuinely no idea right now. It's really scary.
But
like,
that's okay.
Like,
we've had a lot of people come on here who are like not sure, or when they first started getting into the industry, they weren't sure what they wanted to do, and I think that's okay. And I think we have this pressure as a society that like you need to have goals and you need to have like everything planned out. I am that person, but not everybody is that person, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think I really would have I'm at the point for me though where I feel like I really want to figure it out, especially as a producer. But like I'm struggling with like really where I want to go. Like I am absolutely really excited about the path of production. I just don't know where my end goal is yet right now. Like whether
do you find that you enjoy a specific type of production? Because like honestly, like a lot of the times at companies, like you like it depends on the company you're working at, but sometimes like a producer's specifically managing like art people. Sometimes they're specifically managing engineers, and sometimes you manage a bunch of different people. It just depends on like what how your team is set up. Yeah, the organization.
Like the facet of production. Like I don't necessarily, so like I'm really like I do. The best way to describe me right now in my specialty is I'm a live producer. So I actively work on content that is constantly updating. I think I'm leaning more towards strategic vision, which would be more executive production. But like, I just don't have the experience in that yet. And I'm really excited to learn that. But like, it's again, it's still like a weird area because I'm still trying to figure it out. And I'm actually working with my own manager.
In 5 or 10 years, we'll have you back on and we'll see where you're at. No, we joke around with people, but I honestly think it would be cool to kind of bring people back after like a few years and see like where their stories have taken them. I mean, Austin and I the thing that I love about these fireside chats is we get to meet a lot of people and talk to them about like their dreams and, you know, like seeing people and how they change and like where they started and their journey into what they love is very exciting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, I think I'd be excited to come back. You can invite me.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, we'll put you on the
More
list.
than happy to have you back.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think, production and me are going to go a long way. Where I go, I don't necessarily know quite yet. I'm still kind of figuring that out.
And that's okay. Well, we're excited to see the journey and watch you live vicariously through your work and see what you do. Is there anything that inspires you, like on your day-to-day work? Like I think a lot of times I give the example of, you know, people who are making costume designs, looking at fashion and watching how crazy like the fashion industry is and like these high fashion concepts, and they kind of integrate those into like warrior combat, you know, fashion design into their you know, day-to-day tasks. What inspires you? Is it music? Is it like when you're like hardcore getting the production on, what's the thing that kind of motivates you?
It's actually just other games. Like I'm really like I'm still an avid gamer. Like I'm still kind of in the middle of Ghost of Tsushima right now, and I'm like, loving,
I finished it. Yep. It's so good, and
I'm not there yet.
The ending is on the audio. The song is so good.
No,
it's a very good game. I highly recommend. Everybody should play it.
I get to like, it's cool to feel like I know a lot of people now in the industry, which is like a weird thing to say. Like I'm trying not really hard to like, I know everybody in the industry because I really don't. But like, it's cool to know people at very specific studios. And when they release a thing, it's like, I get to see the really cool things that they made.
Yeah.
And so like, I get like inspired.
That's my fiance, sorry. He just sneezed really loud. He's in like a whole nother room. That was a big sneeze. Bless you, sir.
Boy. That was amazing. Sorry, that was amazing. Yeah, like I just get really inspired by the work that I see. Like I'm playing my season on Destiny, and then like I just released Rivals. Yeah. There's a lot of in my head. But that's really like I get inspired by that. I get inspired by like again Ghost of Tsushima. Like I'm like really excited about the new Spider-Man game that's coming out. Like I got to like this the PlayStation reveal today was awesome. So a lot of the games that are coming out inspire me to continue pursuing the stuff that I'm doing. Like because I'm like I want to celebrate my seasons with folks. Like I'm gonna release it. Get really excited about my things, please.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
And I think I often tell, you know, like people that I've worked with, like at other companies, you know, like congratulations on making great products, you know. Yeah. I think we are in such a small industry that, you know, someday maybe one or two of us are going to all work together, you know, like you never know what's going to happen. And it's beautiful. I think seeing everyone's work come to life. And what's funny is like you're on the flip side of being someone who's like really excited about someone else's product, and that person is like loves that you're like that's the thing that drives them, right?
Makes
like
them happy.
Yeah, and like you even talked about how like the thing that motivates you, like earlier on when we were talking about like, you know, why you got into the industry, it is like because you like seeing other people play your product, and like it's very like that's a big accomplishment for you. And I think everyone kind of has that feel, and I think even better is when somebody in the industry that you like admire loves the game that you made. Like, it's huge.
Oh yeah, like that's always really exciting. Yeah, no, it's really cool. I also just randomly thought of another recommendation of a thing.
Go for it.
Earlier
Yeah, go.
for like just tips and advice, which would be like just get familiar with all the other workflows. So like understand what game design does, understand like what art does, like how do people build very specific things. I've got like a level design book somewhere over here. I went to school for art, so I have like that very like innate knowledge of how to do those specific things, but like learning about the different disciplines is super valuable too. Okay, there we go. That was my tangent.
It does give you a lot of value because you understand, like,
Yeah.
I agree completely. Like, the beauty of being somebody who understands everything as a whole, when you talk, like, even just in these fireside chats, when we're talking to people who have different disciplines, I understand like the intricacies of what they work on because I'm in the industry and I see all these different things, and I've taken the time and effort to learn about those things, or I've experienced them because, you know, I was a game designer for 6 years, so like I know what the intricacies of like working with an art person is, working with design, working with all these different disciplines, and it gives you like a different perspective.
Yes.
So if you can't experience it yourself, learning about it, I think, is very valuable.
Yep.
Is there a dream project that you'd love to work on? I know you said that you would love to own your own studio someday, but if you were to own your own studio, maybe the question should be more like, what would be the game that you would make, or like the genre?
So I would probably make a platformer, to be completely honest.
I'm so bad at platformers. I love playing, because I see Ori and the Blind Forest right behind you and stuff, and I love that game. It is so beautiful. I cried within the first 5 minutes of playing the first game. The second one is amazing too. Play them all. That game is a platformer that has very difficult portions of it, and I hate platformers, but I also was driven to play that damn game because it was so good. So good.
Yeah,
Yep.
so like I'd either make a platformer or I would make an action adventure game. Like, I don't know if you noticed the whole Kingdom Hearts thing in the background too. But like
Is that like kind of whimsical, like bright colors thing, like really your art style that you did? Because you're an artist, like you started that way, right?
So one of the game that actually really inspired me to get into this industry was Psychonauts.
Oh yes,
Psychonauts is
absolutely.
fun.
Yes, and so like
it's got such a cool art style.
Yes, exactly. So like I would love to create a game like that. To be also completely honest, like I think that's what is one of the most exciting like for a really, really, really long time, I was like, I'd love to work. Like
Double Fine has amazing people. Like I actually know a lot of those folks. I'm in the same boat as you. I feel uncomfortable saying that, but like I know a lot of folks who work there, and like they're just all beautiful, lovely human beings who I'm just like, I love you. Just be my friend forever.
So embarrassing story time. So one of the very first
you heard it here first, not GDA.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
one of the very first GDCs that I attended as like a conference associate was I specifically chose to attend like volunteering and working a panel that had Tim Schafer on it because I was like I really, really like I wanted to meet him. They were doing this thing at GDC where they were giving out like game cards, like, and you could trade with folks to collect I don't remember what it's called, but anyways, I got a card for Tale of Monkey Island, and I was like, I'm gonna go get this signed by Tim. That was the plan. So he did, for the record, he did sign it.
Okay.
But I went into this with like as a fangirl, which was it was one of the I like thinking about it now. I'm like, why did I do the thing that I did?
What did you do now? I want to know.
I asked him for a hug.
I don't think that.
And
it's a little awkward, but I've been asked that before. I prefer someone ask than most people just do it. Yeah, most people just hug me, and I'm like, oh, we're hugging.
But like,
okay.
Yeah, but like it was I waited until the end of the panel. I was like, can you sign this for me? And like, can I give you a hug? And then he gave me a hug, and I was like, and then it was crazy. But in the end, what was really cool about that anyways is like I would leave that panel and I would end up talking to Lee Petty, one of the main art directors over there. And he offered to give me and a couple other folks a tour of Double Fine. And
that's cool.
I left that with a bunch
brilliant.
So I left the studio with like a bunch of swag and like a copy of the DVD of all the cutscenes from Psychonauts, and I was like, I'm good. But like embarrassing story, like
that's not that embarrassing. It's not too bad. It's a little awkward, but at the same time, like I think admiration from somebody who's a fan is like it's a little weird, but it's also at the same time like someone loves your product that much, like it is heartwarming too. Like there is the empathy side of it that I think like he probably really appreciated even through the awkwardness.
Yeah. So like I was very appreciative that he was like very willing to give me a hug, and like he probably doesn't remember me, but like we've run into each other like at every GDC then, and I've awkwardly always been
just like I felt fireworks when you hugged me. Just kidding.
No, but like no, I know, but like I've been wearing a Double Fine t-shirt every time I've run into him, and so it's usually like, hey, nice t-shirt, and like that's the gist of our actual interaction.
You're like, he probably doesn't remember me, but
no,
I remember.
But like, but like it's just like a weird highlight of my career every time I go to GDC, because I'm like, when am I gonna run into Tim Schafer? But like, yeah, no, but like Psychonauts is definitely one of the games that has truly inspired me, and a game that I would love to be able to help create. So I'm looking forward to. I was an instant backer.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love seeing, and I think, I've been on a couple panels where like even developers who are making competing products are on the same panel together, and I love seeing them show admiration for each other's products. It's very cool. Like we all are trying to make amazing entertainment, and I think the beauty of it is that we are all going to play each other's products. It's not just about like us being like, well, ours is the best, so we're to only play ours. I mean, there are
the
people
competition
like that.
the competition I feel like between developers is less than you would think.
Yeah, like I think more often than not we try really hard to just celebrate everybody. Like there's really no like bad blood, or like where
I've seen some bad blood though.
Well, there definitely some, but in general, I feel like most people are friends.
Yeah, like I mean, my fiance works over on Halo Infinite, so like I have a household of Destiny and Halo Infinite, so it's like I am 100% going to be celebrating that, and like it's a lot of that stuff. And I've got a friend who's working on Minecraft, and like a bunch of folks over again at Sucker Punch. So I'm like, I'm celebrating all of those things because they've made really amazing things.
And I always go back to the fact that this is a small industry. Although we make a lot of money for entertainment industry as a whole, it's a baby. We've only been here for a few decades, or like a couple decades. And we're still growing, and there's still a lot of people that you're going to interact with. You're going to work with a lot of people that you've worked with before, and so those faces are familiar. And I think not burning those bridges, being kind to each other is a huge thing. It goes a long way.
Absolutely.
And I guess kind of like to wrap things up here, is there anything else that you kind of want to leave the audience with, like one last piece of advice? Maybe not specifically, it doesn't have to be specifically about production. I know we've talked a lot about production, but just in general, and what would it be? Or, if you have a couple things, you don't have to define it by one.
I think the thing I would say is like, don't give up. Like, especially if you're trying to break into this industry, like I've mentioned it a couple times, know what you're getting into, but it's also one of the hardest industries to break into. And nobody has one break-in industry story that means the same. Like I got relatively lucky, like in that, like my role led to a cooler role, but like if you are very passionate about this and you want to be in here, like it will take time. And like, you will have to push for what you want. And be okay with that. Like I know. I
feel like that's in any industry though. Like if you want something, you gotta work for it and be like dedicated to it, and be kind of a little aggressive, because no one else is gonna care about you and your growth. They're just trying to make money off of you.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, it's sad, but it's the truth.
Yeah. And the last piece of advice I would say is like, it is 100% a-okay to fail. Like don't take that as a failure on your part. Take this as an opportunity to grow. Like you've made a mistake, or like this thing didn't work out, or like this just. Or
you mass emailed everybody, and now everyone sees everyone's emails, and now you're gonna hide under a rock for the next 300 years. Yeah.
Or you push something to production that brought down a Fortune 500 company site for 2 days, and caused their stock to drop.
Okay. Maybe worry about your failure. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
It is a-okay to just grow from that experience. Like, and especially if you get hired at a role and you feel really uncomfortable in it, you have to remember that they decided to hire you for a reason. Like you're going to fail a lot probably in the first couple months that you're there, and you'll just get better at it as you do it more and more.
I like it. We get a lot of, honestly, that is one of the big pieces of advice we get a lot, is don't be afraid of failure. I think it's really interesting to hear that so many times because it's valid. It's important, and I think we worry a lot about like I always say, we are our own critics. We're always worried about like what we do, and we take those failures so harshly. We're like, oh, I suck at what I do. I'm never gonna be where I want to be because I did so bad, or I can't come back from this. And there are people who go into super depression because they like think they can't come back from something, but you can. You can always move forward.
The other thing I would say too is like recognize your boundaries. Like it is super important for you to understand like where you're willing to understand your work boundaries. Like when do you stop? When do you keep pushing? Like you can say no. like 100%. Like if a person tries to scope float you, be like, you're your own producer to an extent. Like you need to help make those decisions so that you're not killing yourself while you're working. Like I won't always be there to just make that hard call for you.
Yeah. Being able to say no. I think it's hard because a lot, like we're all in a kind of industry where it's very much passion project almost. Like where it's like I love what I do and I want to see what I'm working on succeed, so I want to put in the effort. I want to make all the things. I really want to do everything that I possibly can to make this product successful. And sometimes we get into our own heads and we're like, no, yeah, I can totally do like 300 hours of work in one day.
No,
you can't. You can't. And I think it's hard to say no when you can't.
I mean, even if you could, it's not healthy.
Yeah.
It's like...
Yeah. And you will burn out. And that is where we hear a lot of the times people burn out. And sometimes it isn't that you're working overtime. It is that you're overtasking yourself. And it's just too much mentally draining on you, too.
Yeah. Like, I think people will start learning those boundaries the more and more they start working and figuring out where they need to build those boundaries. But like in the initial part of stuff, like you're going to fail. It's going to be okay. You're going to probably say yes a lot, but really you should think about why you're saying yes. And the answer shouldn't be because you want to like appease leadership or appease your manager. The answer should be about how can you better serve yourself.
Yeah, I got to a point where one time my manager told me to tell people no.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to because I would work a lot of hours. I think whenever you first start out in the industry too, it's a mistake that you'll make because you are really passionate and really excited to do all the things. And you're like, yeah, I'll design that whole zone. And yes, I'll take on those classes. And yeah, I'll make this epic quest line because I think I can do it all. And not only that I think I can do it all, is I want to do it all.
Yeah.
And so you put in those extra hours and then you get to a point where like, I'm really exhausted. I wonder why. Maybe because you've worked 4 or 5 weeks in a row and not taken a weekend off.
Yeah.
Don't be an idiot. Don't be me.
Yeah. No, I got like I had to make the hard decision of letting something go, and I was like,
but I want to design that. It's like,
I literally just shoved it on somebody else. I was like, I mentally cannot do this. I need you to do it as much as I want to do it. Have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I like just gave it to them, and I was
but
like,
that's good on you. Yeah. That's good on you. It is hard too, because like you want to do those things. Like I was saying, like you're like, I want to design that class, but I also don't have the time for it. So someone else has to take it on, and it's sad.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Anything else you want to leave us with, or?
I think that's good.
Yeah, you've given us a wealth of knowledge, and also a very interesting topic because I think I don't actually think I've seen a lot of talks about production. And they're like such an integral part of like big corporate companies.
Something that I feel like gets ignored a lot of the time.
Yeah. I feel like this is the first time like I've watched a panel that was, or like, I'm not watching, I'm here, but I'm watching and listening to you very intensely. So I feel like I'm a watcher, but like partaken or watched a panel about production specifically.
Also, real quick, just, talk on that little topic, there are more jobs in the games industry than just designer, programmer, stuff like that. There are lots of things that you can do in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like 100%.
Maybe someday we'll get like a finance person on or a legal or like games legal person. That would be fun.
A games legal person would be amazingly.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if I know anybody.
Rachel, send them our way.
If you do, yeah, that would be amazing.
Speaking of which, if you know anybody in the industry, we have a form. We'll be sharing that out too. you can fill that out, or if you can always tag us and we'll send it their way. But yeah, we'd love to hear from other folks. If you know somebody who you think would be good for a fireside chat, or you're like they would be interested in being on a fireside chat, send them our way. You can send them over to at IGDA San Diego on our Twitter, or you can send them over to our Discord, which is igdasandiego.org/Discord. And Austin and I are both on the Discord. We're willing to talk to people. You can also tweet at me. I'm available. I'll help out, or you can just tweet at the IGDA San Diego channel. With that, I do want to give everybody a chance to kind of say where people can find you at, what projects you're working on that they can go check out. So first and foremost, our lovely guest Rachel, tell people where they can find you and what products you're working on that you are excited about.
Oh, you can find me on Twitter at rawrawbagel. I'm not really on social media outside of Twitter. That's like my main hub. I don't understand how the TikToks or the Facebooks or the things work. I'm an old person. I'm not really that old, but I don't know how to do the social media outside of Twitter.
I wish I could live that life. Part of me is like, I'm just bombarded by messages because my job is communication stuff. So
yes,
I'm just on every platform that's ever possible. I'm there.
Yeah, so Twitter is my main area. Feel free to follow me on there. In terms of things that are currently happening, the most recent season that is currently out in Destiny, so Season of Arrivals, yay! That was my baby with a bunch of other really, really amazing, talented folks. We'll be launching Beyond Light
soon. TM.
Yes, I'm saying TM. But like everybody is really, really jazzed, and I am super excited for folks to get their hands on it.
I know people are excited. I've heard a lot of people very excited about it. So, Austin, where can people find you at and what you up to?
I think for the easiest place to find me if someone wants to get in hold of me is just on the Discord. I'm there, pretty much all the time. And so if you send me a message, I'll likely get back to you pretty quickly.
Awesome.
I'm also on the Discord. I'm just realizing. Yep. I don't remember what my username is, but I'm there. I think it's Raw Muffin.
I think it's Raw Muffin. Raw Muffin.
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah.
And I'm Margaret Crone. You can find me at Margaret Crone in all of the places. That's my name, so it's super easy. If you want to find the social media specifically, you can go to margaretcrone.com. I do a lot of things on the internet. I'm in a lot of tabletop RPG games, so if you are interested in that kind of stuff, I do a lot of acting. Check it out. And beyond that, I work at Intrepid Studios where I make video games. So if you want to check out the game that I'm currently working on, it is called Ashes of Creation, and I've been having a lot of fun working on that. So definitely check it out. We're going to wrap things up. Final reminders are we do have our Game Jam judges finalized. We have chosen the winners for all of the things, and we'll be announcing those in the upcoming weeks. So stay tuned for that. Also, we have a Jackbox Games Mixer on September 23rd. Definitely come join us, igdasandiego.com/Discord. I believe that starts at 7 o'clock and it goes till 9 p.m. So definitely come check it out. Come hang out with us. We're going to play a lot of games and we're going to have a lot of fun. I think I'm running like Drawful, which is going to be cool. We've basically split it up into like 4 different games. Austin, you're running one of them too, right?
I think I'm doing Quiplash.
Yeah. So we've got a lot of fun games, and we mix it up so you're not always with the same group. So you'll get to meet a lot of people. This is the perfect way to network if you want to network and meet new people in the industry, or if you're just looking for some other nerdy gamer friends who will nerd out with you, because there are a lot of great people and they're all nice. And it was our last mixer was so like, people were so sweet. They were like, are you gonna show us a kitty or something?
I'm trying, but she's really far away.
Bring kitty. I'm so excited for cats. Oh,
that's very unhappy.
Oh, is it a Siamese kitty?
This is a snowshoe.
Oh,
she's an angry snowshoe.
The meow. It's a very deep meow.
It's just a really unhappy cat.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's just
looks
like
grumpy cat almost, like a little baby grumpy cat.
Yeah.
What a cutie. I'm distracted. Yeah, we have a lot of fun, and I think one of the people were like really, really kind about our last mixer and saying like it was one of their favorite mixers that they've ever had. So it was just really sweet. So we are definitely excited to do more of them, and we're glad that the success of the last one went well. So come hang out with us. There's a lot. Like we had like, I don't know, like 30 people in that. Like it was very, very good. So come meet up with people. With that, we will have this video up on our Twitch channel where we'll highlight it By we, I mean Austin. And we'll upload it to YouTube so you can check it out over there if you want to relive the action, or if you want to check out some of our other ones, definitely go check it out. Austin and I have gotten the pleasure of talking to a lot of amazing people with various jobs in the industry. We're definitely interested in talking to more people, so come check it out, and hopefully more people will view it, and we'll grow, and we'll get to interview even more cool people. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook, on IGDA San Diego, and on our Discord, igdasandiego.org/discord. And with that, we will see you next month for another Fireside Chat. Toodaloo.
All right.